When you get real and get honest and you face God and face your partner, something beautiful starts to happen. You start to introduce grace.
It's so amazing how God gives you more blessings than you can even imagine when you do His will.
When they start looking through that lens of the atonement through the life experiences, it doesn't change how hard that experience is, but it changes how they process it, and then it allows them to grow from it.
Hello and welcome to Latter-day Profiles. I'm Brian Howard here in St. George, Utah, and joining me today is Rex Davis. Rex, welcome.
Thanks.
Good to have you.
Thanks,
Rex is my cousin, first cousin, so we haven't chatted in a long time because we come from families with lots of kids and that kind of thing, but also the Vice President of Educational Tours. It's right here in St. George. I've been doing that for how many years?
28 years right
28
now.
28 years.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. That'll be a lot of fun. We were talking before, it seems so weird, but your mom and my dad, brother, sister, so that was our aunt and uncle, and they grew up in a very different era. And you were telling me, I didn't realize this story, but your mom was born not in the little cabin that didn't have plumbing, but in a tent. Tell us about that story.
So, it could be family folklore, but the way I understand it is Grandpa had arranged to lease a place that was right in the Depression because she was born in 31. And as they drove up the road, the guy came out waving his hands and said, "No, I already leased it to somebody else." And he'd gotten more money, so he had reneged on it. And so they had a little window of time that they literally stayed in tents.
Yeah.
I understand they had one for the chickens and one for the people. And
yeah.
She just happened to be born during that little window. So.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I grew up in that area in that little cabin. It kind of stands, it's kind of caved in, but it's hard to imagine. No indoor plumbing and no indoor running water either. So that was a crazy, crazy time to
Yeah,
go.
really different.
So I don't know about you, but growing up with big families, what was that experience like for you? Both big families. I have 10 children. I'm the youngest of 10. You're right.
So I'm number 3 of 8.
3 of 8. Yeah. What was it like for you having a big family?
Well, probably a couple of advantages, and one of them probably being third and not last. I think, it was fun. You always had people to do stuff with. We had a lot of fighting in our home because we were all boys, except one. So there's 7 boys, 1 girl.
Poor sister, yeah.
But it was always good memories, always something fun to do. Lots of shadows. Even just being third, there are already shadows,
Yeah.
big brothers that you had to kind of live up to their thing. But yeah, it was, we didn't have a lot, but we always had everything we needed. So.
Yeah. We were connected a little bit before we went on camera because, again, with such big families, most of our aunts and uncles, at least on your mom's side, my dad's side, had big families. And so if it weren't for Facebook, I wouldn't know where most of them lived. And even that, I'm not sure where they live, but I just see pictures of the kids and such. It was kind of fun to keep track of what people are doing. Let's talk about growing up. So you grew up in the Salt Lake area. And where did you grow up?
So born in Salt Lake, spent some real early years down in up in Ammon, Idaho, I guess, and then back to Riverton, Utah. That's what I consider where I'm from. That's where I went to junior high, high school. So that's what I consider home. Bingham High School is where I'm an alumni, being a minor. So
yeah, I remember when you come visit, you were like the city people and we're the country folks living out in the middle of Idaho.
Exactly, yeah.
That's all good. Let's talk about your career path. So right now, you've been doing this for a long time with the educational tours. What was your thoughts? What did you want to go into when you started doing college? You went, I think, finance, right?
Yeah, so I went to Utah State right out of high school, and I served an LDS mission after a year there, and then went back to Utah State, graduated there with a degree in finance and a minor in economics. And at that point, my goal was to do stocks with Merrill Lynch. That's what I wanted to do. And interviewed with Merrill Lynch right out, actually scored the highest on their aptitude test that had ever been scored in the country. I hadn't even been able to drive home before cell phones back then, They were calling me, want me to come back, and when I came back in, they told me I looked too young, they couldn't hire me.
Oh, wow.
So I went into...
Good now, right? You're happy about that.
Right,
now.
Yeah. I went into commercial banking at Zions Bank out of their head office in the Kennecott building for about 3 years. And during that time, I went to what they now call the Executive MBA program at the University of Utah. So I got my Master's of Business Administration then, and shortly after that left commercial banking and went to a company called HGM Medical Lasers, and I was the CFO there for most of the time I was there. So from a big company to kind of a mid-sized company, and after about 7 years, just kind of wanted to do something on my own. And a gal who worked with me, her husband and I are business partners, have been for 28 years. He's a little younger. He'd just gotten out of college, was kind of getting started, and so we partnered up and been doing travel ever since.
Wow. What was it about? I did want to ask you, where'd you go on your mission? Where'd you go?
I served in Sydney, Australia.
Sydney, Australia. What was that experience like for you? Australia is a completely different world, it seems like to me.
Well, if my memory's right, at the time I went, Sydney was the 5th largest city in the world. And you say Riverton was for the city kids, and that might be true compared to Chester, but it was at that time still pretty rural, and so it was a pretty big culture shock to go to a city like that.
Yeah.
So, but it was a good experience. Church was little. I went back 25 years after I was home, and my last area had become 2 stakes and 14 wards.
Oh wow.
So it was really fun to see how much change, and I still was in contact with some people, so I got to see some of the members that were still around.
Still around.
There, yeah.
That's totally cool. Well, I know from growing up, your parents were both very active in the church. You were as well. What kind of influence did that have coming out of your home, as far as your expectations and church callings and things like that? What was that like for you?
So, I mean, yeah, my parents were both very active. I mean, shortly after I was married, my dad and mom were mission presidents down in Buenos Aires. It was interesting growing up in a home like that. You never wondered where they stood on anything. It was black and white to them. I had to figure that out on my own.
Yeah.
But there was years when I was young that I kind of resented how important the church was, because my dad was gone a lot.
Yeah.
But as I got older and gained a better understanding of why he was making that choice, that changed. But
yeah, so it might take some years to figure those things out, right? Why they're gone so much. But let's talk about your business. What was it? Did you have a pretty good plan for this travel business going into it? Was this something you came up with, or was something that already existed?
Yeah, so the business actually was originally founded in 1974, so it's been around a long time. And then in 1992, my business partner got involved that right out of college, and then in 1995 is when we actually partnered up. So it was just small, he just was in a position where he was wanting to grow and wanted some help, and I was in a position that I was wanting to kind of do something, and so through his wife we just knew that, and that's how we ended up together. And so we just do group travel. We don't do any individual. We're a travel agency, but we call ourselves tour operator, and we just do group travel mostly for pre-formed groups. So a group, that means sometimes a lot of high school groups like cheer teams, choirs, private dance studios, like the Heritage Choir here in Southern Utah. We've done trips for them for, 20-something years. So that's just the niche that we've chosen to focus on in the business.
So how does, that's so interesting to me, because I know every year I always hear about this school groups going on this tour and that kind of thing. So how do you get connected with that? Do you go out and meet with schools? How do people find out you have that opportunity?
Yeah,
so you've been doing it long enough now that people just know where you are.
It's changed a lot during the time we've been doing it. I mean, we belong to a couple of national associations, the National Tour Association and the Student Youth Travel Association. And so we get some feedback through them, but mainly it's just you have to meet certain standards to be in those associations. So it kind of lets people know that you meet that kind of standard. Thankfully, we get a lot of repeat business. We really make an effort to provide value. That's different than cheap.
Yeah.
But because we provide value, we get pretty close to 100% retention rate. It's really high. And so that's been great. Referrals are awesome. Of course, nowadays the internet, we have, a website. I've done a lot of direct mail over the years. Don't do that as much anymore. We're always looking, always trying to find that next new group to add into our mix.
Now take me through it. So say a group contacts you, say it's a high school group and they want to go on an educational tour. Where can they go? What kind of things do they do? And how do you know? I mean, you're doing it a long time now, of course. You probably have a lot that are preset you've done over and over again. But how did that work out? How does that work out? And do you like go and make sure, check these out on a regular basis, make sure everything's cool? How do you do that?
Yeah, so we do custom trips, which means that when we have a group, being a preformed group, the group leader chooses dates, they choose destination, they choose what they want included. Some of our group leaders have gone, 30 plus years and know exactly what they want. Some are new and they've never gone, and so we'll just consult with them and figure out kind of why are you traveling, because they almost all have a purpose, whether it's to perform or to learn about history or science, go to Broadway shows, and so we kind of take that mix and then we package everything into one thing. So we usually do air, ground, lodging, meals as requested activities. So we have networks that we've built up over the years of suppliers that we use regularly, and we put it together and send it out. This is what it would cost to do this, and then they get to tweak it a little bit, and then when it's ready, they send it out to the people that are invited, whatever that is.
Gotcha, that makes it. So if instead of me trying to organize everything, I come to you and say, hey, I've got this group, and here's where I'd like to go. Please help me.
Yeah, and it brings in like liability insurance and things. So there's some other benefits besides just taking the pressure off. And then we often will, we offer to travel with them, and we often will accompany a group out, especially if it's kind of a new group leader.
Yeah.
The ones who go to the same place, you have to be like a history club that always goes DC or DC to New York or DC to Boston. After a time or two, they know it as well as we do, so that we don't go with some of those clients. Yeah. Some still request us to go.
Yeah, they just like your company.
That's what we tell ourselves.
I bet you have, so you probably have a lot of repeat customers who've been doing this for years.
Yeah, we do. We actually have schools out of Pocatello that have traveled with us since about the first year the company was founded, clear back in the 70s. And they had never missed with the exception of COVID.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about COVID. What are some of the bigger challenges? Because, traveling, and things have probably changed a lot. I'm thinking when you first started, and we're barely in internet days, right? Until now. Yeah. What are some of the biggest changes in travel that have really taken place between then and where we are at now?
So truly the internet has changed everything because it's easy for everyone to be an expert.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting to learn how to manage that when people want to, like, oh, I saw this online, but they might not really understand what the differences of what they're seeing.
Gotcha.
And just how we are able to market and communication speed, like everything's digital now instead of waiting for mail. And hey, did you get that mail yet? So that, as far as challenges, I mean, the two biggest things that were difficult for us to get through, the first one was 9/11.
Oh, yeah.
So that was
a big deal.
A blind side that took you down. And then the most recent one was COVID. And there's been other things, just normal stuff going on in the country that's affected it. But yeah, COVID, I mean, it was just shut it off. It was worse than 9/11 as far as the impact it had. Yeah.
Hey, how did you, just have to wait it out and wait till things? I mean, what did you do? Because everything got canceled. And what a pain, of course, because now everyone who wanted to go, we have to tell them it's canceled. People are probably calling them and say, when can I go? I don't know. How did you handle that?
Yeah, when you said it was probably a pain, it was a pain. Well, we just did the best we could to get everything canceled with our suppliers, and most of the suppliers were excellent to work with, which allowed us the opportunity, because we pay everything in advance, and then we were able to return the large majority of deposits back to people, because I mean it was a couple of years really before things got kind of back on track, but like pretty much all of 20 and a lot of 21 was really impacted. 22, thankfully, we started to see kind of stuff coming back.
Are things more back to normal at this point?
Yeah, pretty close. I mean, there's some permanent changes, but as far as like the demand for travel, I think it actually is as high as it was pre-COVID.
Do you have some favorite places you managed? Obviously, you got to experiment, right? If you're sending people there, you got to go and check them out. What are some of the favorite places and favorite type of things that you enjoy in your travels?
So I mean, I'd love to go everywhere, and I love to come home. So I mean, when I'm ready to go, I love to go, and I always love to come home. We go to a lot of places over and over because we do a lot of East Coast, so we're out there a lot. New York is one of my favorite places to visit. There's always something to do in that city and something new. We do a lot of theme park tours, so Southern California, Florida, We do, stuff in Texas, Pacific Northwest. So it just kind of depends on the group. But like history groups and drama groups, they pretty much all want to go east. A lot of the performing groups will cheer nationals or drill nationals, and we'll take them down to Southern California or sometimes out to Florida. Dance studios, just Branson, we'll take them there. So just where they can perform, we're always looking for a reason for them to travel. And it complements what they're offering, so it gives their people a chance to, maybe they have a big family like we grew up in, and you don't get through that, but maybe they can take one kid on a history trip because it's just that 8th grade class.
Yeah.
So they can send them one at a time without people feeling like they got treated different. So
Yeah, you say we could have qualified for group travel just as a family.
Right. Yeah, you could have actually.
Could have said it was a school group, right? And got all the discounts. Personally for you, any spots that, this is a spot I really enjoy going to. You told me you went on your first Mediterranean cruise recently.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary, by the
Thanks.
way.
Yeah,
38 years.
38
That's awesome.
years yesterday. So as part of our anniversary celebration, we did a Mediterranean cruise. I personally enjoy cruising because you unpack once, you get to go multiple places. Always something good to eat, always something to do. I don't know. Again, New York is one of my favorite places because when you go places over and over, that continues to offer something new to explore. But I can't think of a place I don't like. Going to the same theme park numerous times in a year, that can get. But then you just remind yourself, hey, I'm at work, and then it's all okay.
You're screaming going down the rides. Hey, this is work.
Right?
That's awesome.
I had a client one day tell me that. He said, I'm just sitting here thinking, tomorrow I'm going to go home, go back to work, and you're at work. And I think we were sitting in SeaWorld at the time.
And you're okay with that. You've been here in St. George area for quite a few years now. Tell me a little bit about that. And at this point, they're actually doing the open house for the St. George Temple that's been renovated. And not too long in the future, there'll be another temple that'll open up. Tell us about your being here in St. George, what it's been like for you, and also in connection with, church is really strong here. There's really a lot of good things going on here.
Yeah, so we moved down here in 1996. Our oldest daughter was just going into first grade. They were starting to tear out all the freeways up in the Salt Lake Valley, getting ready for the Olympics. That's how long it's been. And so my business partner and I both had young families, and we just wanted to raise our families down here. So we had the business up in Bountiful at the time, and we moved it down here, kind of took a gamble. St. George was a lot smaller than it is now. And that was kind of the impetus, just to raise our families down here. And yeah, gospel's, of course, always been strong down here. I mean, we see that change all the time with the demographics as people move in. But yeah, St. George Temple's been down for 4 years, just doing their open house right now. And so we were talking about that. If you can fit it in, you need to go see it. They did an amazing job on that renovation. And I think about as soon as it opens, the open house at the Red Cliffs is going to start. So
Pretty amazing. Yeah, for folks down here has been traveling. There's people travel for hours and hours, but up to Cedar City or down to Vegas. But it'd be nice to have 2 full functioning temples right here in the St. George area. That'd be awesome.
yeah, it will be really nice.
Let's talk. Right now, you're serving as a bishop in a young single adult ward. Tell us about that. And I'm really interested. Right now, you serve as well in a single adult ward on BYU-Idaho's campus in the state presidency. It's been fun to get to know the young men and women at that age. What's your experience been like serving with the youth?
Yeah, so I serve as the bishop in the Morningside Young Single Adult Ward in the St. George, Utah YSA second stake, because we have 2 YSA stakes down here. We have a really big population of young adults. I don't know, my wife and I love it. We've been over there for about 3 years, 3 months, and we just love associating with those youth. And I mean, I always try to remember what was I like. Thankfully, most of them are better than I was, but I was trying to remember that when I work with them because, we change throughout life and it's easy to expect people to be where we are, not where they are. And so it's just awesome to see their testimonies and see the strength they have, to see the ones who struggle and are able to apply the gospel, apply the atonement in their lives and heal and move forward and build their lives. And then you have some that are frustrating because they still are fighting battles that they haven't yet won. And so, I don't know, it keeps me young, I feel like. I love being over there with the young adults.
It's in a unique position because you get to really get close to the young man and woman. What are some of the things that you see, well, both the strengths of this particular generation, and what are the big battles that they're trying to get through, whether it's testimony or other things? But I think a lot of times we focus on the weaknesses, but I think there's a lot of strengths in this particular age group. What do you see?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess kind of addressing that as a YSA bishop, there's certain things I just don't deal with, like welfare is extremely unusual because, the church policy is that first you go self-reliant, then you go to family, then you go to church, and then government. And so if someone has troubles, typically the phase of life they're in, they will go to family. So it's extremely unusual for us to deal with that. Emotional and struggles is pretty high. Of course, the ones that have been around since Adam and Eve, left the garden is we deal a lot with law of chastity issues, some pornography issues. So nothing surprising there. That's the majority of my time was probably in those things, emotional or something to do with those particular commandments. But strengths, I mean, some of these people, you look at their life circumstances, and the ones who have, I was once told that you either get better or you get bitter when you go through different experiences. It's kind of either you turn to the Lord and you get better, or if you turn your back on the Lord, you get bitter. And you see some of the things they've gone through, and they've learned how to turn to the Lord and apply the atonement. And when they start looking through that lens of the atonement through the life experiences, it doesn't change how hard that experience is, but it changes how they process it. And then it allows them to grow from it rather than be like overwhelmed by it.
I'm curious, a couple of questions I'm thinking about as far as taking the step you did to bring your family down here, starting a business. On retrospect, looking at it, do you feel like there's a, divine intervention helping you to go where you needed to go? What do you see as you look back and to see where you are now and how you got there?
I'd say probably you don't recognize things at the time, but looking back on my life, I'd say probably lots of divine intervention, everything from me choosing to serve a mission, which completely changed the trajectory of my life, to the person I married, how we met and where we're at in that window and how our paths crossed and the timing and everything worked out. Career-wise, I mean, I can kind of tie that tail between those transitions, but I mean, when I was back in college working on either degree, I never saw myself where I am as far as career path. I was always kind of focused more on being on a big corporation back in those days, and so it's been quite a bit different. And so I think just as you go through those experiences and you trying to include a gospel perspective. For example, when I left HGM, the kind of the second phase of my career, it was because that was probably hands down my very favorite thing I've ever done, but probably Denine's least favorite because I was gone a lot. It was 12-hour days were not uncommon, including a commute. And as we started to have children, and it's like, I'm missing out on things. By switching to being self-employed, then I've had complete flexibility. If I'm not out of town, I could go to, I didn't miss really any of my kids' games, any dance recitals. I've been able to take them all on trips. We've done trips one-on-one with each of them as they came out of high school. Let them pick anywhere in the world you can go. So, and Denine was invited but chose not to go on those, and so it was just me and each of those children. So things like that you can't. Looking back, you recognize the value, but when you're living it, you don't see like those memories that you build and stuff. You're just kind of trying to, raise your kids and move forward. Now you look back and you talk to them, and it's like some of their favorite memories are trips, both family and some of those individual trips.
That's great. Yeah, I find that's often the case. In the moment, it's hard to see, but looking back, it's we start to identify those key moments in our lives. But Rex, it's been a pleasure to chat with you. Great to catch up. Again, the title of the company is Educational Tours. It's located right here in St. George. And thank you again, Rex. It's so good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you, Brian.